My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day. Waiting for a long time.
It was back in April that Donald Trump unveiled the centerpiece of his economic policy. A giant board of so-called reciprocal tariffs levied against practically every country in the world.
China, 67%.
To stop what Trump claimed was years of America being ripped off when it comes to global trade.
Foreign scavengers have torn apart our once beautiful American dream.
Markets in sell-off mode.
The announcement sparked chaos in stock markets worldwide, upended global trade, and sparked a flurry of lawsuits that claimed Trump had exceeded his authority and only Congress had the power to set tariffs. Last night, a panel of judges in New York agreed, telling Trump his tariff largesse did indeed exceed any authority granted to the president, because the emergency economic law Trump had invoked from the 1970s to impose his levies simply does not allow it.
The Constitution gives the power to tariff to Congress, not to the president. So that means there's got to be some limit when Congress delegates that authority to the president. He can't just assert unlimited authority to tariff whenever he wants.
Meanwhile, the president's press secretary criticized what she called egregious judicial overreach.
There is a troubling and dangerous trend of unelected judges inserting themselves into the presidential decision-making process. America cannot function if President Trump, or any other president for that matter, has their sensitive diplomatic or trade negotiations railroaded by activist judges.
Thank you very much.
In recent weeks, a stream of world leaders have flocked to the White House for urgent trade talks after Trump himself had put the majority of his reciprocal tariffs on hold amid market meltdown. He had kept his huge tariffs against China in place, but flip-flopped on those as well, as he did with his threats of a 50% tariff on the EU, prompting traders to nickname his strategy the taco trade.
Mr. President, Wall Street analysts have coined a new term called the taco trade. They're saying Trump always chickens out on your tariff threats, and that's why markets are higher this week. What's your response to that?
6 months ago, this country was stone cold dead. We had a dead country. We had a country people didn't think it was going to survive, and you ask a nasty question like that. It's called negotiation.
Overnight, that defensive response prompted a flurry of memes on social media mocking the president.
And to all you chickens, you're fired.
And the resurfacing of a skit from Saturday Night Live from 2004. There are some 250 lawsuits against Trump's executive orders, and today's decision adds to the rolling list of those already blocked, including his efforts to ban birthright citizenship, to deport immigrants without due process, his mass layoffs of federal workers, and even today, his attempt to ban Harvard University from enrolling international students. Today, the Trump administration asked an appeals court to block the judge's tariff ruling, and the White House said if it refused to do so, it would take its case all the way to the Supreme Court, as the president battles to keep his signature trade policy alive. Well, it wasn't long ago that we were talking about a constitutional crisis here in America, because it seemed as if Donald Trump was going to ignore all the court rulings against him. We saw that in the order that he was demanded to bring back the plane full of Venezuelan immigrants that had been deported to El Salvador. Then we saw it in a second ruling where he was ordered to bring back one of those Venezuelan men who the White House had even admitted they had erroneously deported to El Salvador. In both those instances, Donald Trump simply ignored those orders, and the White House carried on regardless. Yet slowly but surely there is now beginning to be evidence that Donald Trump's agenda is beginning to be reined in. We saw that, of course, today with a ban on his reciprocal tariffs, and with the judge blocking Trump's attempts to ban Harvard from bringing in foreign students. And couple all of that with the rather dejected departure of Elon Musk overnight from the White House, who has admitted that he was only able to bring a fraction of the federal savings that he promised. And you get a picture of Donald Trump, who is not simply being allowed to do whatever he wants. It is worth noting, of course, that some tariffs have remained on cars and steel and aluminium, but this is nonetheless a significant setback for President Trump today.
Well, joining me now is William Brennan, a lawyer who defended President Trump during his second impeachment trial. William Brennan, if Trump can't get his way in the Supreme Court over tariffs, how do you think he'll respond?
Well, Kathy, I don't know that it's the setback that it's being portrayed as in the press. You must remember that the International Trade Court put a halt on the new tariffs that were imposed under IEEPA, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. And the ruling, the opinion states that Congress has that power and has not relinquished it to the president. But that does not pause or halt or enjoin all tariffs. The steel, aluminum, and auto tariffs that have been in place for some time under Section 232 of the 62 Act are in place. And he's still free to impose tariffs where he finds a deficit, similar to what President Nixon did. And if there's a deficit between our trading partners and us, the United States, under Section 122 of the Deficit Act of 74, they can be imposed.
Okay,
so
I appreciate that, but
it's somewhat limited.
Okay, but he's vowing to go, or his administration is vowing to go to the Supreme Court. So what does he do if that doesn't go his way? Does he effectively ignore the court ruling, as he has pretty much done with the deportations?
No, and I don't know that he has ignored rulings. The ruling in the one deportation case is somewhat difficult to understand. There's orders, to using very subjective words, to precipitate the return or to effectuate the return. Right. So I don't know that he's actually ignored any rulings. I think what he does is he does a workaround. If IEEPA can't be used, then he puts more impetus into the Deficit Trade Act of 74.
Okay, but one person's workaround is another person's ignoring of a court order. I mean, I wonder, when it comes to tariffs or deportations, universities, all these different issues, is he really in a kind of fight to the death with the judiciary now, do you think?
I don't know that he is. He's made a lot of bold moves in his first 100+ days. And when you make bold moves, there's litigation, and that's what's happening. Some he's prevailing on and some he's losing. But let's stick to this tariff issue with the International Trade Court's ruling. I don't know that it's really pragmatically a bad thing for the administration, because I think it'll give some stability to the economy. I think businesses are nervous right now because of the back and forth trade battle. I think it'll give some stability with our trading partners.
Right, so
and
Trump's
I think he
been
sent a
reined
message.
in then. Trump's been reined in by the courts. And you don't mind that?
A little bit, but I think that he went in there and threw a hand grenade into our trading partners' dealings, and I think that he got all of their attention, and he might get what he wants regardless of this ruling that went against him.
I mean, I just wonder, when you stand back a bit and seeing it from this side of the pond, you've got an administration disobeying court orders. I know you quibble with that, but you've got a president pardoning fraudsters. Isn't this the way that a dictatorship begins?
No, Kathy, not at all. If you look at the last administration, they handed out a record number of pardons in his, aside from his family, his son and his brother.
No, not pardoning fraudsters.
President Biden pardoned plenty of fraudsters. He also pardoned, in my home state, Pennsylvania, in the States here, he pardoned a judge who was convicted in what was called kids for cash, a judge who, without disclosing it, had an interest in a private juvenile prison and was sending juveniles to the prison as inventory.
Well,
and that man was pardoned. I mean, you want to talk about a questionable pardon, there's the one.
Okay, but I don't know the facts of that case, and let's not relitigate that here. But ultimately, does all of this get fought out in Congress? You know, the Republicans have got this bill that they want to push through to tame the federal judges. Is that where this goes now?
Well, that's a very good question, Kathy. That goes all the way back to our seminal case of Marbury versus Madison. I mean, we have three branches of government. We have the legislative, the judicial, and the executive, and each has its role. So, and that must be respected. That's what that series of checks and balances is what has made our democracy so great and makes it so long lasting. So, I have every hope that the president, who in effect is the executive branch, will respect the other two branches and their roles.